What up? This is Praveen, aka Braille, and you're checking out Braille Sounds. And today we're gonna try and break out of the loop. The loop, we love it, we use it, we need it. It's one of the core elements of a lot of the electronic music that we make, but it's also one of our biggest enemies. So what I want to do today is to go over a few things that I do to try and break out of the loop. And honestly, most videos you see on YouTube talk about how to break out of the loop when you've already got a loop going. Maybe you've got a dope loop going in Ableton or Cubase or whatever, and now you need to break out of it. But I feel like at that point, you've almost already lost. And what I'd love to do is try and show you a few ways that you can prevent even getting into that scenario. One of the reasons I really enjoy my new process using hardware is that it helps me set the stage for an editing and arranging process that doesn't have as many questions. And less questions I have, the less likely I'm gonna get stuck in a loop. And the main thing that I try to do is make my writing phase, the things that I do before I even go in and edit and arrange, when I'm planting those seeds, I try to make it more about performing and playing than it is about producing. That might seem strange. I'm not trying to produce a jam or anything like that, but having that mindset at the start of writing actually lets me go in later and be the producer with enough material so that I don't get stuck in that loop. I still lean into the loop though. I mean, visually, I actually keep my loops set up in Ableton when I'm recording. And this really prevents a problem with the process that I'm talking about, which is getting overwhelmed. When you record these huge chunks of audio like I'm gonna show you, you can get pretty overwhelmed when you have to go back in and try and figure out what's what. It's deceiving, but I keep them as loops in Ableton until I'm ready to go in and start stretching them out and looking for the good bits. The general process is I set a loop up in Ableton and I start recording. I start playing and performing out here until I find a loop that I'm really vibing with. I record it, performing it live so that I get a lot of variation, and then I move on. I stop that loop. I actually don't stop playback. I just move the loop marker in Ableton and start recording another loop, looking for stronger variation. I keep doing this until I find the core of the song, something that makes me want to jump out of my seat. And I think you all know out there that producer moment where you're like, I got it, this is dope. I think it's what we all are looking for in here. It's that dopamine rush and that real sense of accomplishment, that sense of like, I've just created something that makes me feel good. Hopefully it'll make the rest of the world feel good too. Now I set up my studio and my modular system to be more of an instrument so I can do this easily. You could do similar things in the DAW, but it'll take a little bit of work. You're gonna wanna make sure you have some controllers so you can get hands-on with some of your VSTs, your synths, your drum machines, whatever you're using in the box. And you wanna also make sure that you have something set up so that you can sort of keep looping while you're recording and keep things playing back. And towards the end, I'm gonna show how I actually wrap up the session out here and start going into the box and pulling things out to figure out what's what and how I'm gonna start arranging. But let's get started. We're gonna first, like we do, we're gonna come up with a little chord progression we can vibe with. So one new thing that we got going on is this chorus pedal. It's classic Boss chorus pedal. It's got the synths running through it right now, just to give them a little bit of depth. Pretty subtle, but once we get in the box, we can turn it up or down however we'd like. It can take a little while to get these chords right. All right, just missing one. And then what's next? That's kind of cool. It's a little indie. Yeah, I think I like that. And again, we're gonna get back here and we can change this for the second part. Loop it. You know what? One thing we should do first though, let's set a kick down so that we have a metronome and we know how to play the chord progression. All right, I think we should halftime that. There we go. Looped. Let's bring in the Odessa with some stabs, but keep these sight chords sustained. Let's get some cymbals going. I think I'm feeling some cymbals. Oh, maybe without the delay. Let's not get a clear cymbal sound. Let's get something a little weird that's still percussive and has that decay. Let's get a rhythm down for that psych. Even though I like it sustained, we still want an option to turn off the sustain and have some stabs come through. Some nice textures going on with those cymbals. Really liking it. All right. So now I think I've got this. This chunk is feeling pretty dope. All we gotta do now is just move this over to the next loop. And now we're gonna record a brand new section, start messing with things, but we've already got that old one, so we can always use it later. Let's add some pedal. We're gonna increase the intensity of that bass line by turning up the crate. Again, like I went over in my chords and bass video, the bass line is just a looped random voltage series. So we've got this random set of voltages looping. They go through the symphonian, which is going to quantize them against the chords that we just played. The triggers are based on the intensity of this looped random voltage signal. That's because I'm sending the looped random voltage signal to the trigger count of the Euclidean sequence that's playing the bass line. So we got the mod Medusa here, and we're gonna modulate the pitch of the cymbals with this thing. All right, this is starting to sound different enough, so let's move the loop over again. Let's do a cut down part. All right, we went back to that same version of the chord that we started with. I think this will be dope for like a stripped back part. Loop it. We're changing the modulation on the ultra perk. And I think it's time to move to another loop. I feel like that ultra perk part is a little busy, but one of the great things about multi-tracking everything in is we can go in later and cut it up so it's more sparse. All right, well, I think we've got enough. So let's dive in to the box. So now that we've got all our material recorded into Ableton, we can start going through it and figuring out what we want to keep and basically set up the stage so when you come in here and you're ready to start actually producing and arranging, everything's laid out and ready for you so you know what material you should be working with. Now, there are a few different ways you can do this. Some are more laborious than others. Usually, I don't keep recording the entire time necessarily, so I consider each segment a separate chunk that I need to pull out and stretch back individually. Now, we're lucky because we kept recording the entire time, and one of the benefits of that, just by recording the whole thing and moving the loop marker instead of stopping recording or anything else and staying in that flow, is that we actually have the entire recording contained within the last segment. So it makes stretching this out and getting ready to review the material really easy. We've recorded about 30-40 minutes. So if we move this all the way out, this is all of our takes here. So now that we've dragged everything over to the right, we actually have the entirety of the audio contained in this segment here. In this case, it's so much faster to go in and just get started by dragging a single section all the way back to the beginning. All right, so one interesting thing that we gotta take into account is when you're using hardware and modular gear and you're just recording it in kind of live, off the cuff, building the track as you go. A lot of the time, the one that was happening out here actually doesn't correspond to the one that's happening in Ableton. So one of the first things that you should do is make sure you match the two. It'll make everything going forward a lot easier, especially when you go into a range. So what I'm noticing here is that the one is on the third bar here of this measure. So instead of just going in and cutting like on the ones, we're gonna shift everything over by that one bar. Cool, so now that we've shifted it over, you can see that one that we cut here corresponds with the one in Ableton. So now when we go in and we start chopping and coloring sections to indicate that they're the sections that we want to save for arrangement later, it'll make things a lot easier when we finally do come in and we're ready to arrange and do some extra production. We are going to color green, and that's basically the way that I indicate, all right, cool, these are the good bits that we want to save and use when I open this back up and I'm ready to arrange. speaking of cutting, let's cut these two sections here. Kind of got an early in the track vibe. And we're also gonna cut these filtered out chords here that we can probably use later for some sort of breakdown. Yeah, so this, we'll save this. It's got some sustained chords in the back. So if I mute these chords, actually, I like this section just because of the bass. So I do want to make sure that I save this, but just so that I remember, like, hey, the chords aren't probably the part that you want. We'll keep those a different color. All right, there's a lot of motion in this section, and it's kind of like where I feel like I'm falling into my groove with this part. There's a lot of pedal action going on, so I think we're gonna save this bit. It's a nice little plucky bit here. Some interesting drums. Might come in handy. Let's get this delayed out part here. We'll get this little breakdown, even though, again, like some of those loop parts are a bit off. We can go in and fix that when we're here arranging. Cool, well, I think that's about it for today. The next steps would be, of course, coming in, arranging this track, leveraging the fact that we have colored out the sections that we want to use in the song. You're just trying to get as much material as possible. It's fine to go in and change things later. Anyway, I hope some of this was helpful, gave you some ideas on how you can set up your own environment so that you can prevent getting stuck in the loop from even happening. You know, a lot of the times we get stuck when it's too late, and I still believe that if you prepare ahead of time and have a process that allows for it, you can even prevent getting in that stuck loop state. So anyway, let me know down in the comments what you all do to get out of the loop, some ways that you might set up your environment, your studio, your DAW, to avoid even getting in that stuck loop state. Until next time, thanks for watching.